So the Queensland Premier has called for JobKeeper to be extended to the tourism industry. I know the Treasurer has suggested that is making taxpayers bankroll the border closure. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, the whole point that New South Wales has been so strong in keeping borders open within Australia is to prevent exactly what the Queensland Premier is now complaining about. When you unnecessarily close state borders, you lose jobs, you create hardship, you impact people's mental health and well-being. There is no reason why certain premiers move too quickly in shutting out New South Wales. There is nowhere in the state that's a hotspot, and even if there was, why should people from other parts of the state be prevented from moving freely? Now, she is now the victim of a policy that she put in place herself. And all I say is we need to think about these issues. We need to think about compassion. We need to think about jobs, and we need to think about freedoms as Australians. Because yes, I completely support having strong borders to Australia. But as for all of us within Australia, we're all Australians and we should be moving around freely within our country. Think about the jobs in tourism, the airline industry, hospitality, on compassionate grounds. Some families weren't even able to reunite over Christmas and New Year's. Every time you make a decision, and I know the Deputy Premier and I always really think hard before we make a decision because it weighs heavy on us. A decision you take can impact someone's livelihood, it can impact their health, it can impact their mental health and well-being, and that's why in New South Wales we like to find that balance between keeping the virus at bay but also keeping the economy going and keeping our citizens moving freely, and I wish other states would consider that approach as well.
The 11 sites that have been chosen or released by New South Wales Health for the vaccine to be rolled out, what was the decision behind
Oh, can I please say at the outset that obviously all states will be working with the federal government who's responsible for the vaccine rollout. So what you've seen today is an indication of some of the planning work that's going out, but obviously we'll wait to see the advice the federal government gives us on when the vaccine will be available and how many doses will be available and to whom it should go to. So we're still working through those issues. Obviously New South Wales, as all the states are, is doing its own planning to support the federal government's efforts, but we are still awaiting obviously details from the federal government on how and when it will be rolled out.
Here in the New England there's 150,000 people, or upwards of that alone. That's not taking into Tamworth, Narrabri and those regional communities. The closest place for them is 3 hours.
But that's why I want to stress that what you've read about today is just preliminary planning. It is not the final planning. We're still waiting for the federal government to come back to us on their plans. But I can say, and the Deputy Premier and I sit on the Crisis Cabinet Committee, which looks after these COVID issues, and we've already started discussing how we would get the vaccine out to very regional communities, very remote communities, and that's high up on our list in New South Wales. But we're still going through that planning process. Nothing is final, and it will depend a lot on the advice the federal government gives us as to what is New South Wales' share in terms of the vaccine, but also the categories of people who will be receiving it first, and clearly people working on the front line with the virus, and those most vulnerable will be in the queue first. So once we get that confirmation, we'll be able to then advise the community on all that. But please be assured that no matter where you live in New South Wales, once the vaccine is available, if you want it, we'll make sure, obviously through the federal government, that you'll have access to it.